imagine more stories that soar, business, life, and so much more. Laughs, lessons, and local delight. It's the podcast that feels just right. It's the Imagine More podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Imagine More podcast, where we highlight the people, businesses, and stories that are shaping Moore County and beyond in the best possible ways. I'm your host, Rose Young, and today's guest is someone who has created a space many of you have walked into, stayed longer than you planned, and probably left thinking, we need to come back here. Today, I'm joined by Tim Emmert, founder of Hugger Mugger Brewing. Tim's journey didn't start with brewing. It started in central New York, took him through Syracuse University, into New York City, and then to University of Virginia, where he was working toward a PhD in politics. Politics, really? From there, his work in community development brought him to North Carolina and eventually led to building one of the most recognizable community spaces we have today in Lee County. Tim, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Tim, your path is anything but typical. So I want to start here. When you were in school and heading into politics and academia, what did you think your life was going to look like?
That's a good question. You shared some of these questions ahead of time, and I still don't know how to answer that 100%.
Yeah.
I think back at that stage of my life, there was a real tension between doing things like following some sort of career in the humanities, either doing writing or teaching or academia. But then there was also a really strong impulse to get out of that world and get a little bit more street smarts, get actual factual experience in the world. And I think I've tended towards that since then.
Okay. My daughters always tell me, Mom, you got to get more street smart. Look around. What are you doing? So that's good. But politics, Tim, what did you want to do with politics? Mayor, president?
Yeah, I had no set goal. I grew up in a fairly politics friendly household. I like to tell people our Christmas parties had representation from any political, I guess affiliation or every stripe under the sun at the time. And the main component of it was they all liked talking about politics, policies. There was no, we understood that we were different. And that was acceptable. And you could joke about so-and-so being, they're just a labor rights person, or, they're really captured by the military industrial complex or some, things like that. It wasn't
same Tim.
Yeah, it was a great environment to grow up in. My parents, they would sit on boards or committees, and, my dad helped with political campaigns in the area. So we had just a whole I had a life surrounded by politics,
right,
all the time. And some people hear that term and think politics is a negative thing and I think it's turned into a lot of, without getting too far into it, but I think it's definitely taken much more vicious turn from the very practical problems that when I was growing up, politics was about finding solutions to practical problems. Bringing people along, good leadership was something that you defined as getting people to join together to see through your vision or a shared vision. And, that practical, pragmatic side of politics really isn't emphasized enough nowadays. But that was the environment I grew up in. Was, policy was the centerpiece of a shared value system. And that was very exciting to me growing up. It answered and asked a lot of questions. So as a young person, I was always curious about, how does this work? How does this work? Because, that it seemed like there were, an innumerable number of things that could potentially drive policy and that did drive policy decisions. So it was a very exciting. It was an exciting part of growing up. It probably wasn't my central part, but it was it was the background buzz to a lot of things that either we did as a family or was sort of the background of our lives. So.
Really? And you have your PhD, right?
No, actually,
You're
I
working
finished.
towards it.
Yeah, I finished my first chapter, and actually, it was on the topic was political skepticism.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Interesting.
That would have given recent times would have given me a lot of fertile ground to work with. Right.
Wouldn't it have?
But there were a number of challenges. Some self-imposed, others not so much.
Right.
One of the central things that derailed my interest eventually in moving forward was there's a couple different routes I could have taken with that. And one would have been political theory, which would have been absolutely wonderful, fascinating, just a life of the mind kind of thing. That would have been awesome. But there's about one job a year available on that. And I couldn't even imagine what you do with a PhD in political theory without working in academics.
Yeah.
And then the other approach would be really heavily statistics based.
Uh-huh.
And I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship one summer to go to stats camp at University of Michigan and really get exposed to a whole number of things. I was there mainly for multivariate regression, but there were all sorts of things that you could do with statistics that were absolutely fascinating. And so I sat in on a lot of seminars and so on. But the problem was I don't have a real aptitude for it. And I probably needed a better background going into graduate school with that to feel comfortable with it, because I didn't have any mentors who were comfortable with it to the level that I needed to be. So
what I like hearing you say was that your parents had, these parties, and there would be there wouldn't just be all Republicans there or all Democrats or, whatever. Everybody mixed and talked, and, that's what we're missing. I'm telling you, a lot of times I keep my mouth shut just because, I don't know what's going to happen if I say something that I feel,
Well, these were family friends. So they, we had some background, right, with one another. And where I grew up, it was very rural, but it was still a much larger community than it is here, for instance. So there's about 250,000 people who live in the county I grew up in, as opposed to about 100,000 here today.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was, and upstate New York is famously very politically diverse. Traditionally, upstate New York, if you go back 150 years or so, maybe even earlier, radical groups came to upstate New York because if they were being chased out of the United States, they had Canada right there to go across the border.
Oh, really?
So
they could run as fast as they could get over the border.
The most famous, probably radical group of the time were the Mormons, because that's where Mormonism started, is in upstate New York. And it's still, it's still a very strong community there.
I did not realize that. I always think Utah, Right.
Well, and eventually they ended up there after stopping Cincinnati and elsewhere. But yeah, it's interesting. There's also still, there was a very big communist community there. Not in this. Yeah, it was a self-contained, if you've heard of Oneida Silver, I believe, is the same company as started as a commune. Just common, I guess everyone's labor was in common, these sort of things. It eventually was. It's a very famous study example of what was possible with communism and its eventual downfall as a community. So but that's just a number. When I first went to UVA, I looked at some charts and maps that were shared with us about radical groups in the U.S. and the number of ones that were to be found in upstate New York was larger than a lot of other areas.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
How long were you there?
Up until 98, I think it was 1998. So, yeah.
Yeah. So what brought you down to North Carolina?
Oh, man. So I think I was in New York City, and I had moved there to spend time with friends of mine. And basically, growing up, my family never went out. We rarely traveled. And I had an experience that kind of opened up my eyes to a much broader world, right?
Okay.
And so I wanted new experiences. So I moved to New York and stayed at a friend's place because they were off being a stewardess for an airline but really loved their place. So I stayed there for a while and then moved to Astoria, Queens. And I just, New York, my experience in New York was mainly about going out, learning about, things I never got a chance to experience in upstate New York. So a lot of art, a lot of food.
A lot of food.
Yeah. I mean, when I first landed in New York and I found out that like my neighborhood was like somebody shook up the world and just dumped it out in Queens. It was so exciting. I think I gained 100 pounds that first year because I just wanted to eat out every night. And
well, that's a melting pot. That's what we are. That's our melting pot.
It
right?
was, yeah. I mean, it was not all. It's not always all positive, but the positive thing was there are all these people who were working so hard to stay here and have an opportunity, and it was really cool to see. It was very much the American dream in action for a lot of people. It's not that way for everybody, but certainly that dream was alive and well for many people in those neighborhoods. Yeah.
Well, that's nice. I liked hearing about that. But you're still not in North Carolina. You're in New York City now.
Right. So at some point I decided I needed to get a little bit more serious about my life, and I wanted to, I wanted to give it a shot with academics, and I applied to a number of schools. Oddly enough, University of Virginia was the best of those schools, and they admitted me and nobody else did. So they got me. And, graduate school is a great experience for somebody who's been in the work world for a little bit and sees how, especially as a young person, how very challenging, it can be to just make enough money to pay your rent and bills and all that, right? So, it can be a real rat race. And when you look at what graduate school consists of, which is just basically reading, writing, studying, making some academic relationships so you can build a career in that looks like basically recreation in comparison. So
if you love that, and you do, you love the academia.
It was exciting. It was really exciting, but it's funny. You see a lot of smart people in academia, and that doesn't mean that they go on to get a PhD. I know a lot of people who,
no, absolutely not,
for various reasons, just did not. And I look at the people who did, and they had a very focused plan for what they were doing, and they were probably more mature than the rest of us in that way. Maybe not us in every way, but certainly in those ways, and that put them in good stead. But I met a number of people who were there maybe 12, 13 years.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
And it really is, it's a very charmed life to be an adult and doing just those sort of doing those sort of things that really don't have any practical impact.
No.
Yeah.
And also, does it feed you and clothe you and
I'll tell
pay
you,
your rent?
There was one year I was there that I think I made $12,000. I lived off of $12,000 one year.
Yeah.
It was shocking.
Was it a happy year?
It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was always awesome because
you're
surrounded by people who are just bright, motivated, and interesting. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Keep going, Tim, because you're still not in North Carolina.
Right. I told you I talked. So, yeah, I'd been there for a few years and, ended up meeting my wife in Charlottesville. And, at that point, the calculation for things changed. I did not want to be one of those people spending over a decade in graduate school. I was confronted with that decision point between theory and stats, and I just decided this is not. My wife would have stayed with me to see these things through,
right?
But I don't. I think ultimately we made the right choice in saying we need to go and make a life for ourselves somewhere and figure out what the next stage of things looks like.
And you chose Sandford, North Carolina?
Well, we first moved, actually, the first few months we lived in North Carolina, we lived in Star. So we lived in Star because I had come down to work for Starworks, for a small town revitalization program. And then during that time, we drove through Carthage several times and noticed a house we really loved. And, at one time I stopped downtown to ask somebody about, the historic district. I noted the house. Next time I drove through town, I had a for sale sign out front. Yeah, so that's a small town for you, where you stop and do a business.
Somebody called in.
That's right. And that was exactly it. Just the timing happened to be good.
Oh, well, I certainly believe that, what's meant to be is meant to be.
It felt that way, and it still
Mhm.
does. That the home, ever since we've lived in it, just it feels right.
So you live in Carthage. What made you open Hugger Mugger in Sandford?
Yeah, so we looked at a number of things. I think we looked at Pinehurst, Pittsboro, and Sandford
Uh-huh.
as possible locations, and just kind of looked at demographics and economic data, some things like that.
Right.
And Sandford seemed like the best fit. Sandford unusual is an unusual location because
Okay.
it's about 15 miles to the next, I guess you'd say, significant small town or city.
All right.
Yeah, so it's sort of on an island.
Yeah, it's like all by itself out there, huh?
Yeah, so that's an advantage and a disadvantage.
Yeah, right. Well, for a business, especially.
Yeah, so it's sort of like you have a captured audience, but then also you're always hoping to draw
Right.
from
Right.
outside your area.
People drive down to Sandford from here. We do it.
Oh, sure.
We drive down there quite a bit, as a matter of fact. So when you think about all those years and you were involved in the community and you were doing all the market research and everything, what did that teach you about what a community really needs?
Mm. Well, what a community needs is what the people there feel it needs.
Right.
That's part of it. Obviously, there's a kind of heavy caveat there. You need good leadership to help set and establish priorities.
Yeah.
We as just citizens, we can report our own experiences, right? And
Uh-huh.
we live that. But I think communities probably need people who can communicate with one another, talk. There's that social capital bit of establishing good networks, making
Yes.
sure, that's what the neighborhood watch sort of concept is, right?
Right.
With neighborhood policing. But there's any number of good examples. I think the most important thing though is that we are able to greet one another. We can recognize a fair number of people in our community, and that we have kind of a generous spirit with our community as well.
Right.
Not everyone is like us, nor do they strive to be. So I think
And
there's
that's
some of that.
good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's okay. So do you do community work in Carthage area or do you work with Sanford or how do you get out there and join the community?
I don't have as much time as I used to.
Well, no.
Yeah. So at the moment, very little.
Uh-huh.
By nature, I'm really an introvert, but I'm motivated by things I enjoy.
Okay.
So, for me, working with the brewery and doing a lot of things that I do it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose of humanity. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. I just mean it's a lot for me to process. We
Really?
just had a Brews, Blues, and Barbecue event on
Uh-huh.
Saturday.
Oh,
And
tell me about it.
I probably said hi and talked to about 100 people. That's a lot for me.
Yeah.
That's exhausting. I need a day of you know, yesterday my wife and I just sat around in our jammies more or less and,
No.
talked to family and friends and watched TV, but kept it very low key because
Okay.
I just need to de-stress after that. Yeah.
My middle child is very much like that. She does so well out, when she, okay, turns it on. Here I am, here I am. But then she has to have that come down time, recharge time.
Yes, that's
Uh-huh.
it. And that I actually did not realize how much I needed that until we started the brewery.
Yeah.
And the number of connections that we made and people we knew just exploded, and I would just come home and just lay on the couch for a minute and just tell my wife I need about 10-15 minutes of just nothing for
Yeah. Now, how about your wife? Is she an introvert as well, or is she an
oh no,
extrovert?
no,
Oh,
she's
she loves all that.
yeah, she loves it. She is a very social person.
Yeah.
Which is a fact I think she forgets because she's also very bright. She's got a very academic mind to her. So, but she is very much so. She feeds off of social interactions. I watch her and she just gets stronger and more motivated and more animated. And, you take that away from her for a while and she just kind of powers down.
Okay.
But you put her in a social situation and next thing you know, she's at it again. And we are in a number of ways always a good match and pair for each other, but
Right.
that's certainly one that we've discovered over time.
Oh, that's cool. All right, so let's talk about the leap that you took to Hugger Mugger. You had a solid path. You were thinking about politics, meaningful work. You come down here after college and you end up here and you say, let's do this. So you opened in 2018, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and what did you hope Hugger Mugger would become? Tell me about that whole transition.
Oof. I left my job in community development in 2016
Okay.
in order to develop the brewery because it takes a long time to make the connections you need. It's a very capital intensive business.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And yeah, so it took about, for us, it was probably record time. It was about 16 months between the time I left my work and the time we closed on our loans.
Okay.
And then so that was April 2017. And today may actually be the anniversary of that. Yeah, isn't that
That's
interesting?
exciting.
And then, it took a couple months to get into the building that we had found. And then after that, it was go, go, go. And it was all
Yeah.
construction. I had an injury, herniated disc that happened towards the end, which was
no.
slowed things down a little bit. But we were open by, January 18th, 2018.
That is really cool. So why a brewery though? I mean, where did that come from?
Oh, so lifelong love of beer, I would say.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity when I was at Syracuse to live in London, and I convinced a pub there to hire me.
Okay.
And they did. They hired me for a few months, and that's where I first got to see up close what a public house concept was and what it meant to be a neighborhood institution. And I'll give you an example that, things that blew my mind. One of them was we had a guy who sat in a corner booth in this old pub that I attended, and kind of a larger gentleman, but he always dressed fine. He always dressed in a suit and kind of his tie was a little bit adjusted and he looked slightly disheveled, but presentable.
Okay.
Right? And he always had these young kids who would come in the late afternoon and hop into the booth and talk to him for a bit and hop out. And I thought, this is really weird.
Yeah.
It set my radar off even as a young guy. And manager said, no, that he's a school teacher. And he comes in here, pops in for a pint, and he has office hours with his kid.
No.
Uh-huh. But that was it. I mean, that was the idea.
Office hours at the pub.
Right. I mean, it was a community institution. Moms used to come there with their baby in a pram, and they'd have a beer on a nice Saturday afternoon in the middle of a walk, and then maybe somebody came by and said hi. Maybe they made up with somebody. Maybe they just went on their journey. It was, you just see it. It operates maybe in a way that people don't normally think about drinking establishments.
Right. It's true.
Yeah. So then having seen that and also having paired that with, when I was there, I got to try a lot of different styles of beer. It was the beginning of the craft beer revolution, but I was enamored by a lot of the European styles that I was trying.
Okay.
And then I came back, lived in New York City. There were some pubs there called Jekyll and Hyde for a while there that had these amazing tap lists. And so I kind of got to know my beer styles a little bit better. And yeah, over time, it just, I started brewing my own beer. I got really down the rabbit hole of what it is to enjoy beer history, beer economics, all that
there's
stuff.
your academia coming in.
Yeah.
So you brought that in anyway.
That's right. I can't shake it.
No.
Yeah.
So we lived in Europe for 16 years.
Okay.
And I know what you're talking about with the pubs and how different it is because we would go on, we lived in Germany. And so, I mean, they were very active, riding their bikes, walking, all kinds of things that go on. And there would be pubs, just stuck on the side of the road out in the middle of nowhere. So you'd be walking on your walk and you'd stop in, have lunch, drink a beer, even on the side of a mountain.
Oh, yeah.
When you climb up the mountains and whatnot, it's really cool.
Yeah. We have friends who are Austrian, and we get over there when we can. And they've introduced us to, that manner. It's very similar as the Germans, obviously. So
Yeah.
that manner of active lifestyle and, and enjoying beers, it's a great combination.
Yes, it really is. So, but I also know that their beer has very little preservatives in it, and you don't have to drink it super, super cold. Did you make your beer sort of like European beer, or tell me about how you brew?
So we do a lot of different styles. In fact, I think we've decided at this point, we've done so much, it's rare that we will put out something that nowadays that you haven't seen before, probably because we've done about 90 different brands, and that is incredible.
Oh, that's a lot.
But there's some commonalities. We love Belgian styles of beer.
Okay. Oh, Belgian beers have high alcohol content, don't they?
Not necessarily. Ours are probably at times they can be higher. So we have a really well-received beer called Haster. That's a Belgian triple.
Okay.
And that's, I think, the highest rated beer triple in North Carolina on Untapped. So that one's well-received. We have a quad, which is 12.3% alcohol.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
And I think that should be something that my business partner and our brewer, David, has to be proud of, because it's very tough to brew a beer with high alcohol and then find a role for that alcohol such that it doesn't kind of stand out like a sore thumb.
Interesting.
And he's really it's a delicious beer. He's done a beautiful job with it. But yeah, Belgian beers are by and large, the flavor profile is driven by the yeast. The yeast produces esters, and those esters are the flavor compounds that you taste. We do a few dark beers. We do sours. We do fruited sours. One of the things that distinguishes us is our use of real fruit in beers. David does a great job with that. It's challenging to work with fruit for reasons I won't get into right now. If you look at like major brands of beer and try something that has like an orange component to it, it's flavored by extract and not real fruit.
Yeah.
And now I'm spoiled because I very sensitive to extract beers, and I will only I can only really drink beers with real fruit content in them.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I wouldn't have even thought of that. I know one particular beer that is orange, but I don't thought of that with the fruit is in beer,
Yeah, it's unusual. It is definitely something different for us. It's very well received. Folks, by and large, love it. I mean, we don't push our hand too much with this. We're not half our beers are fruited or anything like that. It's one or two, but another thing that distinguishes us is we don't do a lot of hoppy beers. We're not big on. We have a couple IPAs and that's it.
That's it.
Yeah,
good.
And I know there's. It's funny. It's all over the map, but it used to be that everyone was chasing after IPAs. And the problem was because there were so many, there really weren't that many really good ones.
No, I'm not really a fan so much of IPAs.
Most people are not, I think, but there's a vibe, and I love everything that we produce. So
do you do an amber beer? Because that's what I like.
Well, that's funny that you mentioned that. I still don't know exactly what an amber beer is, even after all these years. That's what I like to tell people, because folks say, I want an amber beer. I said, well, tell me what that is.
Like Schmidtwicks is what I like.
Smithwick's, yeah. But see, if I ask somebody, they will say, oh, it's it's very malty, or it's very hoppy, or it's very light, or it's a little bit heavier.
No.
Right. Nobody knows. So, that's the thing. You get people who ask for an amber beer, and if we don't know what that thing is, then we can't brew it.
Right.
And
I certainly couldn't tell you what it is.
I'm confused.
Just that I like it.
Yeah. So if you come and ask for an amber beer, we have things that are maybe amber beer adjacent, but that's also how we approach brewing generally is that you don't let, there are style guidelines for every style of beer, right?
Okay.
But we don't let that stand in the way of making a beer that is very approachable and that you want more than one of, because that's sort of the point of a volume business. So that's it.
So, do you think that your background and the way you started and your experiences, just going out in the world and opening your mind, do you think that has changed the way you approach opening a business or running a business?
I think, well, yeah, that's an interesting question. Certainly, it had some role.
Yes.
I think the thing that comes to mind is with community development, there's something called asset-based community development,
Okay.
ABCD.
Uh-huh.
And that really applies, I think, to what's been my approach, at least, to developing the brewery is, you work very broad-based. You look for what assets you have in your community. You see if folks want to leverage those assets into something else, either more, either larger more of the same, or maybe something different in the same context.
Yeah.
So some of that certainly, and then also just a broad-based approach. I'm not when I look at our consumer base, I'm not looking at like demographics necessarily. I'm looking at, well, what do people do? What do they want to do? What's attractive? What's fun?
Right.
Because if you look at our socials and how we present ourselves, a lot of times it's less about the beer and more about sort of the attitude and these things. And I think
Community.
yeah, and for most of us, that's what we're looking for anyway. The beer is secondary to that. So.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, and that's my approach. I mean,
Yeah.
I think
Dave might differ.
Dave might differ on that. Yeah,
Which is good.
and I don't disagree with him, except I think when you're building a business like ours, especially in a place that's it's relatively small in Sandford, right?
Uh-huh.
And I think you have to have a very broad-based approach and go beyond, promoting just beer, because we have become more than that, right?
Right, and that's what I was going to say. So, what you've built, it's not just a brewery. You've got a place where people gather. You have host everything from live music to festivals. What makes an event space feel right? What kind of event do you host at your place? What feels right for you?
Oof, we've hosted a lot of stuff.
Have you?
I would be hard pressed to tell you everything that we've done, and I'm always looking ahead to different things. So, for instance, we're going to have some flamenco music and dancers this summer.
Oh, no kidding!
I'm working with a belly dancer on belly dancing classes, but we always offer the standard brewery yoga.
Brewery yoga? Is that a standard? Because I've never heard of that.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yes. In the brewery world, you almost have to have brewery yoga. And then brewery Zumba is coming soon.
Oh my goodness!
We have an awesome group of line dancers with Buckles and Boots line dancing group.
Really?
It's beyond that. We have Trivia Tuesdays. We've got book clubs on Wednesdays. We've got our beer share group. We've got a First Fridays. We bring in a guy who's just absolutely awesome with retro arcade games. And he takes over the brewery on about one weekend a month, and we pay him, and you don't have to pay. You come in and play retro arcade games all day long.
No kidding. I bet the community loves that.
Oh, they do. They do. I mean, it is fun, and also he and his wife are just sweet, awesome people. So that's one of the nice things you get to do as a business owner, is you get to pick and choose who you get to work with, and so
right.
Yeah, we're fortunate we have that. But I don't know if there's necessarily a secret to events. I think the main thing is you don't want to get in people's way. You want to make sure people know what they're getting into, right? So you just have to be very direct about here's what's involved, and then yeah, that's mainly it. Not a whole lot of rules. One thing I found is that I think a lot of people think, and I don't know, I have some suppositions about where this has come from, but I think a lot of people think that the world out there is pretty unsafe, and that they need to be protected against certain things, or I don't know. It's just this sense I get.
Yeah.
And people say to me from time to time, can I leave my purse here, or can I do this and that?
Right.
And we just, my experience has been that people, when you stand back and just let people have the space itself, they treat that as their own. And because they treat that as their own, they protect it. And we just we don't have problems like that because we just stand back and let people have the space.
Nice.
That's theirs to do what they will with.
Yeah.
And again, we rarely have problems, but it is actually a very or I don't know the best words for it, but it's very affirming to see how people treat each other and treat the space itself, because there's just we don't have the sort of issues that I think when people walk through the door, they worry about a space. This is a bar. This is something I need to be concerned about.
Right.
No, not so much. I mean, it's we've done a pretty good job of making sure when we do have rare incidents that's taken care of. And to be honest, I think most of the people come to our place and our staff are on it well before anybody else is. So. Yeah, that's that has been very nice to see. People are much better than you think they are.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, you do worry, and then something happens, like I'm talking to you and I hear that what you're talking about, and I think, okay, it's not as bad as I guess the media tells us it is.
Well, yeah, I'm not a Pollyanna to say like everything is great, but I do think I think there's a lot of room out there for us to give each other some grace in life and say, actually most people are pretty good at heart.
Yeah. So, Tim, listening to you talk about building something from the ground up, it really highlights how important it is to have the right people and support around you. This episode is brought to you by local partners who continue to invest in this community. Take a moment to support the businesses that support Moore County. Let's talk about the people, because this is something you said that really stood out to me, that your customers reflect the community. What does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
Well, yeah, I guess I do like to say that. When I have a rare chance to travel and do other things, I'll go to other craft breweries, and a lot of times it's the main components, the main customers are folks who look like me, white guys with beards.
Okay. There's a lot of beards out there.
There are a lot of beards out there.
That's very stylish right now.
It is.
Yeah.
And that was one of, depending on who you talk to, sometimes that's a knock on craft beer because it's not always very representative of kind of the community that it's in. But we've actually been, I think, pretty fortunate that people have discovered us from a variety of backgrounds, and it probably relates back to our approach to hospitality and some of the things that we do. We do very broad-based community events, so that attracts a lot of people from all backgrounds. But some of the, I don't know how to put it best, but I'll give you a couple examples.
Okay.
One is, you see a lot of young people in our place, right? But you also see folks in their 60s and 70s coming in, right? Just to have a beer here and there between doing whatever things they're doing.
Right.
I know when you retire, you get busier than you ever had before.
It's true.
But, we do things such that, like, if I'm there on a Saturday night, sometimes I'm up at the bar and English isn't the language being spoken at the bar. And I actually feel very good about that because it means we've made a space that more than just people who are like me want to come and spend time there.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing.
I do too.
Yeah, I think it's positive. I think it's a positive in part because it brings people together that might not otherwise experience each other, might not otherwise say even hello to each other, might not ever find opportunity to break bread with them in some way. I think that's positive. I think it's marked in part by, or one of the outcomes is we have a lot of people who have met at the brewery and gotten married.
No, that's so cool.
I forget what the exact count is at the moment, and I don't know if we necessarily know of all of them, but we've had some weddings at the brewery because people have met there.
Oh, that is super cool.
Yeah. So, and it's just unlikely pairings. It doesn't always make sense right off the top of your head, and then it's it does over time. You get to know them. It does, and I'd say our staff are so behind this. I mean, we're very fortunate. We've had a number of our staff have been with us for many years.
That is fortunate.
It is, and they're the ones who, when Dave and I, we are demanding. And we ask more of them than just being bartenders, but they also, I think they want that and they add their own thing to it. I'll give an example, so we talk about like, you want a place that it looks like the community that you're in, right? And how people are good people at heart, generally speaking.
Right.
And, we have a gentleman who comes in, has a beer, on the regular, and he lost his wife. He's in his 70s and early 70s, I believe, and he lost his wife recently. And our staff went to his funeral, went to her funeral with him, because he didn't. I don't know if he necessarily had somebody else with him, and they just love him, and that's one of the things that I can't do and David can't do. We can't teach people to be loving, caring, good people.
No.
But our staff already are those people, and to see, I didn't find out about it until
really?
It was, they, I don't need to be so nosy and to know everything every day, but they told me about that, and it was stunning, but it was also perfectly in character with them, and the sort of culture that we would hope that they would be building in the brewery.
Yeah. Oh, that tears me up a little bit to hear that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I was thinking about it on the way down here, and it choked me up a bit because, there's other things. They're just, by and large, our staff are just very good, both with each other and with people who come into the brewery, and they serve as ambassadors to our area. So it's not just about us. It's about, don't you love, these things about living in the Sandhills or living in Sandford, or do you know about this? So they're great ambassadors to that, but they're also at heart good people and do care deeply about our folks who come in.
So every business can look great from the outside, but there are always moments people don't see. What's been one of the harder parts of this journey, or something that you've learned you didn't expect?
One thing that small business owners, because at the end of the day, we're still a small business, right? We're not, even if we look big, we have got a big building, and we have probably a larger operation than maybe about half the breweries in the state. We're still a small business.
Okay, yeah.
And
locally owned
and operated. So, one of the things, people who start a small business, I feel like they're never really told that you have to market. And you don't have to just market, you have to market yourself all the time.
Yes.
You are always having to market. And that is a challenge to make that part of your mindset when you're going into starting a business. Everything else is about the product and the culture and all these other major things that you need to build a business. But, at the end of the day, if you're not spending, 25% of your day at least on marketing and promoting in some form or fashion, then you're probably not going to be happy with the results.
Right. You say 25%. I feel like marketing is a full-time job.
It is.
It is.
And it should be built into everything you do, whether it's talking to the insurance salesman, or the insurance company that, you have to work with on an annual basis for policies, or it's working with your staff, or it's just going out to get a donut. You're always making, relationships, and people identify you with the business you have. So,
that's right.
There's opportunity everywhere. But that's one thing. And I would say the other thing that I did not realize was the work-life balance.
Oh, gosh. That's something that I hear over and over again.
Breweries will eat you alive.
Really?
Yeah, because there's so much work. There's so much work that needs to be done. And we have a huge building that will also likewise eat you alive if you let it. And we had been open for 2 years when COVID hit.
Oh, no, that's right.
2 years before that, I had left my job to start brewery. So to be honest, I had been going full steam and in a very stressful environment for about 4 years, and I was grateful for the slowdown.
Were you?
Yep.
That is so interesting to hear as a small business owner, 2020, grateful for the slowdown.
I did not realize until maybe 2 weeks in, into COVID that it was actually having a physical effect, having a little bit of time off,
Yeah.
and that felt so good. And it's caused me to rethink how, I work in a different way than I did pre-COVID for sure. Now, I don't mean to make it out that was a great time. I don't think anyone would agree with that.
Understand what you're talking about.
But since then, it's opened my eyes to how important that work-life balance is.
Right. Now, does your wife have a full-time job too, or does she work with you in the brewery?
She does. She works for the state, actually.
Does she?
Yeah. From time to time, she threatens to come and do various things. And she comes up for events and participates. Again, she's so social that, by the end of the day, like on Saturday, I was just beat.
Yeah.
My phone says I walked 16 miles between Friday and Saturday.
Oh, Lord.
Just for the event. And she's not exhausted. She's fired up. Yeah, she's got all this energy, and people see her and their eyes light up, and
Cool.
yeah. So she's always offering to help out, but really the most help she can be is just be herself and connect with all the people who are so happy to see her. And we have people come in the brewery that I've known for years now, and the first thing they always ask is, "Where's Patty?"
Oh, no.
Yeah, I try not to take offense, but I think I get what they're talking about. Yes.
That's funny.
Mhm.
Well, I can tell just by your description that you appreciate and love her for being exactly who she is.
Oh yeah, we are a funny and really natural pairing, and it's funny. My parents, when they first met Patty afterwards, they were asking, they had asked her a lot of questions about, her life and this and that. And then when she indicated that she had a interest in politics, they said, "Oh, okay." And after that, it clicked for them, and they could understand her. And there definitely is that side. I mean, she yeah. So
Do y'all
anyway,
disagree, or are you on the same page?
I think we are definitely on the same page, broadly speaking.
Okay.
We have differences either on how you get there, technique or approach or whatever.
Right.
We definitely, yeah, and it goes back to background and
Absolutely does.
what turns our wheels to begin with.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit more rough and tumble than she is.
Are you?
Yeah, yes, I was reminded that this morning.
Oh, yeah. That's funny. My husband would probably take that as a compliment. Yeah.
It can be. It can be. One of those valors or discretion is the better part of valor.
That's right.
I forget that all too often.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go to our quick fire round. So I'm just going to throw out a question and don't think about it too much. Just answer right away. So, favorite beer you've brewed?
Sleigh Bell.
Sleigh Bell. What's Sleigh Bell?
Sleigh Bell is, we would release it around wintertime, right? And it's SLAY BELLE. It's tangerine rosemary IPA.
No kidding.
Yeah, but the hop bitterness is kind of in the background, but the rosemary and tangerine is in the foreground, and it's delicate, it's delicious. I am a personal fan of herbed beers.
Okay.
There's a style called Groot, which is much older than beers with hop in them.
Yeah.
But the commercial viability of an herbed beer is certainly in question.
Yeah.
But I love herb beers, and back when I brewed my own, I would tend towards, if I could, making herb beer.
No, that's interesting. I love that. So go to drink place when you're off the clock.
Drink place?
Yes, drink place.
Oof, boy, typically back porch.
Back porch, right?
But
And
I have
beer.
I have a number of local favorites.
Okay.
So we love going to Ashton's. We've been going there since we came to the area, and I cannot. We
There's
rarely.
nothing like it.
There's nothing.
It's so different.
Yeah, and really since we arrived, we've loved their connection with local and
Absolutely.
they're just awesome. Southern Pines Growler Company. We love what we call the Growler store.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, the great selection there. Beltree is awesome. I'll go to Beltree if there's a game on. Wine cellar is a really chill atmosphere, so we like that. 195 is really nice.
Yeah.
We love 195. That's typically a lunch destination for us when we're out and about in Southern Pines and Aberdeen. Oh yeah, it is always. So just like Ashton's, they've been doing great things for years. I'm leaving a few places out because I can only list so many. Sometimes we stop by Red's Corner because they just have a diversity of things.
Absolutely. Do you have like an outdoorsy space like that at Red's Corner at the Hugger Mugger?
We do, and we actually have food trucks pretty much every day. Just like Red's Corner. There is a lot of sharing of food trucks between us and them. That's always another curiosity for me is who's pulling into Red's Corner. So.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right. So favorite event at Hugger Mugger?
Probably Carolina Indie Fest.
Oh, tell me what that is.
So that's a 2-day music festival. We put 10 bands on stage. We get a really nice professional light and sound crew that do work all over the state. We have a website, carolinaindiefest.net, and we get submissions from between 500 to 1,000 bands a year.
Oh, wow.
And I do make a commitment to listen to all of them. So,
are you a music lover?
I am now.
Yeah.
I would have never told you. I'm a failed musician. I've done poorly at piano, saxophone. I even have a theremin, jaw harp, harmonica. I've tried all sorts of things. I'm bad at all of them. I can no longer read music, but I can put together a music festival, and it is entirely supported by the community. So it is sponsor driven. You do not pay a ticket fee to come in.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and it is
for 10 bands in 2 days. That's amazing.
It's a pricey festival to put on, but the community supports it.
Wow.
And we get a few thousand people every year for it. And it's just
what time of year is that in?
So our next one is May 15th, 16th.
Oh, it's coming up, everybody. Yep.
And at one point we switched to doing 2 a year, so we have another one in September. I think it's the last Friday and Saturday in September. And the reason for that is we wanted to lift the profile of it.
Yeah.
But I think next year will be our 10th if we're so fortunate to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And at that point, we might just go to one a year because it is a real challenge to put this on. I'm grateful our sponsors make it easy on me, but I think I counted it up at one point. I think it's about 250 people ish that I have to connect with and communicate with to put on the festival.
Oh wow!
And we
You're exhausted after that.
We get what we call the indie hangover. Yeah. The worst thing you can do is be a bartender on the Sunday after Indie Fest because everybody's wagon is dragging, and you've been drinking from a fire hose of humanity for 2 days, and it's just crazy. It is a lot of fun. But one of the reasons why I love it is because when you go to the festival, we basically take over more or less one hillside in downtown Sandford for this festival. And when you go, people are so happy. There are just smiles everywhere.
Yeah,
folks are enjoying their time, and
wonderful.
it's yes, the music is there, but it's also the people viewing is awesome. We have tons of vendors. We have great beer. There's lots of food options. Everything is all in one place, and you can just wander around. I think the average time that a visitor spends at Indie Fest is somewhere around 2 hours.
Wow, yeah.
and it
Oh
is,
my goodness.
and it is just, it's so much fun. And at some point during the day, I get a chance to sit back and enjoy it too.
Do you? During the festival?
Uh-huh.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna come for sure. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It is. It's a great time. Every time is a great time, and I'm grateful that the city of Sandford allows us to partner with them on doing some things there, because they allow us to use a public parking lot for a portion of it. And really grateful to our sponsors who had faith in us. We took over a festival that the sponsors, or the folks who were putting on the very first Carolina Indie Fest, we partnered with them,
Okay.
and they went out of business.
Oh no.
Yeah. So we were asked to take it over, and I had never done anything like that before.
Really?
So and we did, and I've been very cautious. I'm very conservative with, the financials and how we handle things like that. So I didn't know we could do it. And now I know we can do it. And it's
10 years, the 10th year, yeah.
But we get submissions, and we bring in people from all over the country.
Really?
Yeah. So that's a really cool thing.
So it's great for Sandford. It's great for North Carolina.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It goes beyond just the brewery, and it's also, despite it being a massive amount of work, it is fun, and it's something I can be proud of, I think.
Yeah. It sounds fabulous. Will I see you there, or is there so many people I won't be able to see anywhere?
Oh, I'll be on stage introducing the bands. I'd prefer not to. As I said earlier, I'm a bit of an introvert, but on Indie Fest days, I'm going to be getting my steps in, and I'm going to be talking to a lot of folks.
Okay. So one word that describes your place.
It's going to be trite, but happy. I'm going to say happy.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Well, you've described it that way.
It really is. I'm so fortunate that I work with people, and that people that have come to us see that, see that other people are happy when they're at our place and enjoying their life, and that we don't get in the way of that. We only try and enhance that where we can.
Okay.
And yeah, I think happiness is definitely key. Again, the festivals that we put on, it's just everyone's smiling, everyone's like giving each other hugs and high fives, and meeting up with people they haven't seen.
Yeah.
Hugging each other's dogs or babies or whatever you got going on. There's just so much. And, I got oh yes, always. And at some point I got off of social media personally. I only do it for work now. And so these events are awesome for me, because that's how I get to know what's going on in people's lives.
Okay.
And I love that. I really love that. It's part of what makes me smile.
Oh, that's really cool too. All right. So something people would be surprised to learn about you.
Probably the introvert part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the people that work for you, they wouldn't know that.
They might. They might. I hate to say they know me so well, but also, there's also, I really have a deep love for literature and poetry, and that's not something I ever get a chance to really express. And at some point we are going to do a literary festival at the brewery, and
Really?
I very much want to do that. It's one of those things that has to happen once maybe we pare down to one Indie Fest, because I'll have the time to do it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to hook you up with Julie Borshak at the Weymouth Center, because we're all about the literary.
Yeah.
And so she would be all over that, having a literary festival with you.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, it's deeply ingrained. I don't get to read as much as I would love to, but yeah, there's so much as a kid. And my mom used to take me to the library every week.
Really?
Right? And I always had a stack of books next to my desk, or next to my bedside. We didn't really have cable TV, and we lived in a valley where you only got 2 channels. So
we had 3 channels.
Well, look at that. What kind of luxury is this?
Well, ABC, CBS, and NBC.
Yeah, I think we didn't get CBS. I didn't get like Dukes of Hazzard, Ray of the Fun Show, But yeah, reading was a core component of growing up. If I wasn't outside running around like an idiot, I was inside reading. And, imagination and curiosity are our friends. So,
Yes, absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so Tim, as a gift to all of my guests on the Imagine More podcast, I do a jingle for each one. It's your jingle, so if you like it, you can use it on your social media or wherever you want to use it. This is how yours goes.
Hugger Mugger, doors wide open where stories start, no words unspoken. Pull up a chair, no need to hurry. You'll find your people at Hugger Mugger Brewing Company.
Oh, wow. That is very good. And I have a soft spot in my heart for jingles
Do you?
because when I was growing up, my parents would turn the radio on as they were getting the house ready before starting breakfast and going out to work, right? Just like making the bed, doing stuff in the bathroom, so on. And so they would have it on AM radio. And growing up back, when I was a kid in the late 70s, there were jingles on radio for all the businesses, right? And so I still know all those jingles. They're all rattling around my head.
What jingle do you know?
Oh, no, I'm not going to
Look it out, Tim.
We will do that off air. But yeah, and I bring it up. I'll text my sister, or I've got a good friend that we've known each other since 8 years old, and I'll text them and say, "Oh, do you remember such and such a place that had those jingles?" Of course, and I always scour the web looking for them because you really can't find them as much anymore. One of my favorites was ironically favorite. There was a grocery store called Chicago Market.
Okay.
And they had their brand included a talking shopping cart.
Really?
And I, as a kid, I didn't realize it, but I think it was there to appeal to frustrated moms because it's part of the jingle said, "Come on in and push me around."
Yeah.
And I always thought as a kid, I thought, "Oh, that's so silly." As an adult, I thought, "Oh, that's so smart." So thank you. That's an awesome jingle.
Good.
We may be stealing that for some things.
If you wouldn't be stealing it, I'll be yours.
Oh,
it's
thank you.
Absolutely yours. Okay, so before we wrap up, Tim, I want you to talk to the people listening out there that might be worried about starting a business. They're thinking about it. Maybe there's some kind of tip, or what would you tell those people that are waiting? They have this business, they want to do it, but they're scared to jump on it.
Everybody is very different.
Right.
So I want to start there because I don't think there's ever a blanket statement you can make for something like that. But you should certainly. One thing that I found, and I think you would find in talking to successful small business owners, people who have been in business for a while and have demonstrated that they have the ability to stay on top of things, right?
Right.
Is that they listen to themselves. There's sort of, I don't know how to explain it better than that. I think, you have your own instincts, and, I'm not talking about making decisions that should be backed by facts and these sort of things.
Right.
But there are certain things about, like, do I get in business with this person, or do I go in this direction with my business, or do I, do I take this particular approach with my business? Is that going to be either good for the business or good for me as a person? Because it has to jive with who you are, under the skin, right?
Right.
And I think people look everywhere else for answers so often, and really a lot of the time the answer that you need to push you in one direction or another is in yourself, but you have to trust it. And so many of us don't get put in situations enough where we're forced to make that decision.
Right.
But if you're a small business owner, you will make 1,000, tiny decisions every month. And after a while, you just have to, in the beginning, you very much sweat it, right?
Yeah.
Or at least I did. I sweat the details. But then, over time, I think I've learned, and I've been fortunate to work with a number of good business people in the Sandford area. And just from watching them operate and talking to them a bit, I think that listening to yourself and following that, whatever kind of quiet voice is inside you,
right.
If you follow that, I think you'll be happy with the result. It doesn't always lead to success, maybe, but I think you're not going to work hard for a business that doesn't meet that piece of you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. And we all need to learn to listen to ourselves. I mean, there is a voice
generally
there.
speaking, yes, that's an awesome bit of advice.
It really is. Okay, so what's next for the Hugger Mugger? What are you excited about right now?
Ooh, well, we've got Carolina Indie Fest coming up in a month. In fact, today is the first day that I actually turn on the marketing for that, so that's good.
Okay.
And I'm always excited about that, and I try not to look too far past that because I have another one coming down the road in
And that's
September.
huge, yeah.
But long term for us, there's a lot of interesting things. The craft beer market is, a lot of people pronounced it dead, I think, about a year and a half ago because there were so many so many breweries that went out of business.
Right, we had that right here.
Yeah. Well, but for years they've been talking about doing a market correction. That there were, I mean, it's astounding the amount of money that's been put into breweries, and I'm not talking about locally. I'm just saying
Right.
as a general broad brush comment.
Uh,
It's amazing that you can't have that many breweries and have people who understand the industry. So many of us walked into the industry knowing little to nothing about it.
Yeah.
Right, and it's not. It's not for the faint of heart. It's demanding of time, it's demanding of capital. And if you get to, a particular point, then you're in a good place, right?
Yeah.
But it's a real challenge. It's very much a challenging industry. And a lot of people found that out. And honestly, a lot of people have learned what it's like to manage, like I have, a very business in a challenging industry. But for us specifically at the brewery, what I think we might see in the coming next couple of years is maybe us doing some of the things we wanted to do when we set out. Like,
Oh, yeah, there you go.
yeah, like do a barreling program. When we stepped into our building, there were so many needs that we had to set aside some of the things we were going to do
Right.
because we had to pay for, entirely new air conditioning,
Yeah, oh,
these
was it
sort
an
of
old building?
things. Yeah, it needs some love. So, yeah, so I think some of the things that we might do is get into some of the things we wanted to do that to begin with. So
I
maybe
love that idea.
maybe some barrel aging, maybe some Solera type things where we mix and blend sours or something, because not many people do that. Kind of really emphasizing the boutique nature of what we do.
Right.
That would be kind of, without having David next to me to say that, I would say that that might be a thing. And then also there may be different things, I'll always have the brewery as part of my life and things that I do.
Uh-huh.
But, I'm about to turn 51, and it would be awesome to take on one more new thing before heading off into whatever a retirement would look.
Oh, yeah,
look
just wait
like.
till you're 60 because then you'll be going, huh, I think I need one more new thing.
Right, I imagine so. It could be that, but that's kind of where my head is at the moment.
Okay,
So
yeah.
that's where I think we are going to be headed.
And how can people contact you or get to the Hugger Mugger Brewing?
Well, all roads lead to Hugger Mugger, don't they? They Well, we're in downtown Sandford. I like to say we're Sandford's healthiest street because we're situated between Sandra's Bakery and Millie's Mama Bakes Cookie Shop.
Oh, and I have heard of both of those places.
Yes, yep, yeah. Of course you have. So that's
Cookies, beer, cookies.
yeah.
Right?
When we first located to Sandford, I figured out the way to let people know where we are is I said, "Oh, you just have to. We're right next to Sandra's Bakery." They knew right away. But if you're traveling through Sandford, maybe on Horner Boulevard or on Wicker Street, and you see a big mural of a baseball player on the side of a building, just head up that street a couple doors, and there we are.
And there you are.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And are you hiring or?
No,
not yet, not right now, because you've got those people that are staying with you.
I'm telling you, we have one guy. First of all, there is a long-standing tradition of hiring people named Drew. So we have.
Oh, really?
We have 3 right now. I don't know.
Drew, that's not a common name.
Well, I mean, it is at the brewery. But yeah, we've had folks stay with us now our entire time. Some of them, but most everyone has been there at least 2 or 3 years, and to differing capacities and so on. We try and find things for people to do, and even as we look at new opportunities and things like this, we just had a conversation with staff about, well, if we go in this direction, do this thing, would you be interested in any of these things? And we're very open and honest with our staff. Our staff know on any given, they all know how we do on a given night. There's really no secrets among them. So I think that's partly why they've been there so long. Is that we're demanding, but we're honest, and we treat them as fairly as we possibly can.
That speaks volumes about leadership, Tim, that you have people that have been with you for this long.
Yeah, it does tickle me. And yeah, I think David and I are both fortunate, and sometimes you make your own luck.
Yeah. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, and support the local businesses that make our area feel like home. I'll put your website and contact information in the podcast description.
Thank you.
For everyone to grab. Tim, what you've built is something really special. It's not just a place people go, it's a place people return to. So I'll leave listeners to this. Thank you so much for coming, by the way. This was so much fun talking with you.
It was a delight.
Yes. So imagine this, a place where you walk in and feel like you belong without even trying. Imagine that those spaces exist because someone had the courage, like Tim, to create them at Hugger Mugger. And as always, keep imagining more.
Imagine more stories that soar, business, life, and so much more. Laughs, lessons, and local delight. It's the podcast that feels just right. It's the Imagine More podcast.